How's it going, everybody? Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Jason, and in today's video, we're going to be previewing and predicting Week 19 of the 2023 CFL season. Let's get into it. So starting us off with a very interesting Friday night doubleheader. Starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have the 11-5 BC Lions visiting the 8-8 Hamilton Tigercats. Very interesting game here, I think, with BC coming off, a very disappointing result last week against Winnipeg, looking to bounce back, even though they don't really have too much of a shot, still at first place in the West. Hamilton still has a shot at second place in the East. They just need to win and hope that Edmonton beats Montreal on Saturday. So I think at the end of the day, both these teams still have something to fight for, and it's a good litmus test for where both of these teams are at. Now, in terms of the players I'm watching for in this game, for BC, I'm going with wide receiver Dominic Rhymes, who looked great last week, besides that one play at the end of the game where it looked like he could have scored the game-winning touchdown, but decided not to really slide down and preserve time with a couple seconds left on the clock to kick the game-winning field goal. So ultimately, just a poor choice of judgment from him, but still a great player. Don't blame him too much in that situation, and I think that he's going to have a big bounce-back game in this one. And I'm really excited to see him out there on the field with that great BC receiving core. Now, for Hamilton, I'm going with a couple of players, and that is Jared and Jamal Davis, defensive linemen for the Hamilton Tigercats. I think that Jared in particular, he has been very interesting the last couple of weeks. Earlier this season, he was not playing very well for Hamilton. He had some kind of a knee issue, and the Ticats even tried to trade him away to the Calgary Stampeders. That trade was actually voided due to a failed physical by Jared Davis, so he ultimately returns to Hamilton. I didn't think we were going to see him back in a Ticats uniform, but ultimately they mended the fences, and he's out there playing his ass off on the defensive line for the Ticats. Still does not have a sack on the season, which is disappointing, but I think he's really making an impact the last couple of weeks, getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback, getting his hands up, tipping balls at the line of scrimmage. So I think Jared's playing very, very well, and he typically plays very well down the stretches of seasons in his career. And the other guy is Jamal Davis, who they just signed a couple of weeks ago from the Montreal Alouettes, and he's making an immediate impact. 2 sacks in his first 2 games as a Ticat. He's a guy that a couple of years ago was drawing comparisons to Willie Jefferson as a long, lanky pass rusher. I think he's really showing a lot of potential so far in his early time with the Ticats. So in terms of my prediction for this game, I think it's going to be very, very close. I went back and forth on this one, but ultimately I'm going to go with the Ticats to win this one at home. 27-26. They already proved that they could beat BC in BC. Now let's see if they can do the reverse and win at home against BC. BC, of course, traveling cross-country to play them. Very tough road trips to go out east and win. So I think at the end of the day, I'm going to go with the Ticats to win, but I think it's going to be a great game. Now moving on to the second end of tonight's doubleheader at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, we have the 6-10 Saskatchewan Roughriders visiting the 4-11 Calgary Stampeders in a game that has a lot of importance in terms of the playoff race. I made a video yesterday discussing, the implications of this game and comparing these two teams. So go check that out, guys, if you're interested in that. The players that I'm watching for in this game, running back Jamal Morrow for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It feels like at times this season, he's really the only bright spot on that offense. So I think that, he's having a pretty decent season. At times, he's been in and out of the lineup, but I thought he had a really good game last week in a game that, none of that team played well. So I think at the end of the day, he could be the guy that steps up and gives a big game against that Calgary Stampeders running defense that is not necessarily the best in the league. And then for Calgary, I'm going with wide receiver Markin Michel, who has big shoes to fill in this game. He's always been in the starting lineup, but I think he's going to assume the role as that number 1 receiver in this game because Reggie Bagleton is actually out with injury. Going to be very, very tough for Calgary to overcome that injury, but Michel is going to have to step up in a big way. And other guys like Luther Hakunavanu, Trey Odom-Dukes, I think those kind of guys are going to have big games in the absence of Bagleton if Calgary is going to come out with a nice victory here. So in terms of my pick for this game, I already spoiled it if you guys watched the video yesterday, but I'm going to take Saskatchewan to win this game 19-16. I just don't have any trust in Calgary right now. I think I've given them a lot of chances this season to prove me wrong, and ultimately they just keep on letting me down. And I think at the end of the day, Saskatchewan's been very disappointing the last 5 games of the season, but I think at the end of the day, they've been able to rise to the occasion more than Calgary this season with the 6 wins versus the 4 wins for Calgary. So I'm going to take Saskatchewan to win this game 19-16. Now moving over to Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern, we have the 9-7 Montreal Alouettes visiting the 4-12 Edmonton Elks in a game that I think has some intrigue to it. I think that even with Edmonton eliminated from playoff contention, I think they're still battling hard, for their coaches over there, and I think establishing jobs for next year. So I think this is a very interesting game, and it'll be interesting to see if Montreal goes into Edmonton and gets a victory here, if Edmonton can win that last home game of the season. Now, in terms of the players I'm watching for in this game, I'm going with defensive end Sean Lemon for the Montreal Alouettes, a guy that has really proved the doubters wrong this season, signed midway through the season after being cut in training camp by the BC Lions, and I think he's had a great season for the Alouettes this year, and it's been kind of a missing piece for that defensive line. Just crossed the 100-sack plateau last week, so he's one of the 13 players, I think, in CFL history that has reached 100 sacks, so congratulations to him, and is still playing at a very high level. And for Edmonton, I'm going with a former Alouette, Eugene Lewis, wide receiver, who's had a quiet season over there, being the highest paid receiver in the CFL, missed a lot of time at the beginning of the season, has been kind of solid since he's been back. He's made a couple of big plays, but I think ultimately he still has a couple of big games left in him, the last couple games of the season, and I think he could have a big one in this game against the Montreal Alouettes, his former team. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Eugene Lewis can do in this game. And in terms of my pick for this game, I mean, I can't break the Alouettes, trend of the season where they've won every game against every team that's not BC, Toronto, or Winnipeg. So they've beaten everybody else. They've not lost to anybody else in the CFL. So I'm not going to go against that. I'm going to take the Alouettes to win this game 25-17 on the road in Edmonton and lock up second place in the East. Now closing out week 19 in the CFL with the most meaningless game of the week, to be frank with you. No playoff implications in this one whatsoever. Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we have the 4-12 Ottawa Redblacks visiting the 13-2 Toronto Argonauts. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see what strategy the Argos deploy in this one. How long do they put their starters in? I mean, it's been kind of an interesting thing to see play out the last couple of weeks because they clinched first place so long ago. So I think in this game, that's really the true story in this one for the Argos. And then Ottawa already eliminated from playoff contention as well. So there's not too many interesting storylines or reasons to watch this game. But regardless, these are some players I am watching in this game. Defensive back Brandon Dandridge for the Ottawa Redblacks. I think he's been my favorite player to watch from them this season. A guy that contributes on kick returns and is also an excellent defensive back there. I think he's been a bright spot on an otherwise, putrid Ottawa secondary. And then for Toronto, I'm going with running back Deonta McMahon, who's been a newcomer the last couple of weeks since, they've been resting starters. He's kind of an electric running back. I think that, he's more in that scat back Peyton Logan mold. I think he's a very explosive athlete. So I think that, he's a guy that could be a breakout star next year in the CFL. Is going to get a lot of reps these last couple of weeks of the season. Toronto still has 3 games left to go. So it's going to be interesting to see how much he plays the last few weeks of the season, but he's impressed me so far. Now, in terms of my pick for this game, not that it matters for the standings or anything, but I got to take Toronto to win this game quite easily, regardless of who's playing. I'm going to take them to win 31-20 at home at BMO Field and go to 14-2 on the season. But with that said, that is just your preview for Week 19 of the 2023 CFL season. Be sure to let me know your predictions down below. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.